me some drama.
Sometimes I wanna go. Some days I gotta go.
Hi, I'm Susette Dutson, and I am a producer slash assistant director for an independent film company called Chester Films, but I also do some freelance stuff on the side. So I moved to New York 2 years ago, like almost to the day actually. Awesome. And I wanted to be an actor. That's what I studied in college. And so for like 6 months I did that, and then all of a sudden January of 2018 I like had this really strong feeling that I should switch to production side instead, and I was like, that's super weird. And so I got on Backstage and started looking for production jobs, and I got the first 3 I applied for, one of those being working with Chester. And so I was like, okay, well I guess if I'm getting jobs I may as well do it, and then I just kept doing it, I guess. Yeah. Probably that, I don't know, that I have a little bit of a tendency to want to make everybody happy, and that I needed to let that go really quickly, because some jobs that I was applying for and then I did phone interviews, and the person sounded like not super organized and a little bit like they weren't quite ready for a producer or a director yet. They just wanted someone else to finish the job for them, and I wanted to like be helpful, and I was like, oh, this guy's really like, he needs help, but like I didn't need to be taking those jobs. I needed to be taking jobs that were already ready for me to step in, were already prepared. So like, it was a little awkward at first, because there was one job that I was like, yeah, maybe, like, let me think about it. And he like just kept texting me and was like, so, because he wanted someone to review the script too. Anyway, he just wasn't ready. He shouldn't have put an ad on Backstage yet. He just wasn't ready for someone to come in. And I called my dad and I was like, do I say yes? My dad was like, no. And I was like, okay, fine. So I turned the guy down, and I think it was a good decision. He emailed me like, oh my gosh, like a year later, and was like, hey, I ended up not making the movie. I kept trying to finish the script and I just couldn't figure out the ending. So, but I'll let you know if it's up and when I'm more ready. And I was like, sweet. So like, his name was Adam, I remember. I was excited that he touched base with me, because I was like kind of feeling a little bad about it. But anyway, I would say the quickest thing I learned about myself was that sometimes you can't make everybody happy. You need to focus on your career and yourself first before you can, you know, offer help to other people. Hilarious.
So you're originally from?
Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah, my dad's an actor and my mom's a singer. So when I was a kid and I saw an ad on the TV to go audition for a play, I was like, can I go do that? They're like, yeah, of course. They went crazy. So pretty much my whole life since I was like 6 years old, I've been pursuing the arts, and they've always been very supportive and not really surprised by it. And when we decided to move to New York, we decided like 2 months before we left, because that's kind of how we do things in my family. And so we like sat our families down and we're like, hey, we're moving across the country 2 months. And most of them were like, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of sadness that we wouldn't be like around to hang out, but everyone's been really great, and especially my friends who know me super well, because they know that I've always wanted to come and live here. So yeah, it's been a good support system for sure. So I would say I am / have been a bit of a struggling Christian, not in the sense that I ever stopped really believing in Jesus Christ and God and their existence and their caring for us, but I sometimes felt like I was just on my own, like blind, and their hand just wasn't in my life anymore, and I wasn't sure why I was feeling abandoned, I guess. And those times are when I'm working on things that aren't creative. So I'm really good at business management. I've done restaurants, I've done retail, I've done stuff like that, and I'm really good at it, and I rise in the ranks really fast, but I'm never happy there, and those are the times when I feel the most down. I'm like, what is wrong with me? And just this weekend, actually, like yesterday, the day before Friday, I figured out why, and it's because when I don't have something creatively inspiring in my life, then I feel disconnected spiritually. So I think choosing this as an actual career path is more than just a career. It's a lifestyle. Like, it's the life I want. And I was watching Stranger Things and just sobbing like a baby, like I do when I watch really good stuff. And I like did an Instagram live and I was talking to myself and I was just saying that sometimes when I'm feeling really down, I just need a little inspiration. And I know a lot of Christians go to prayer for that, and I've never really been a prayer. My version of prayer is more watching a movie or reading a book or going somewhere cool and like experiencing someone else's process helps me connect better to mine, I guess. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but I would say, I mean, and this kind of goes in line with me being Christian, is finding jobs where the content is something that I'm okay with being a part of and having my name on, because I mean, I'm pretty liberal. Like I will, if the storyline is good and if it's leading somewhere good, it doesn't really matter to me. But if the messages or even some of the dialogue is stuff that I'm just like, oh, it's been really hard, especially in New York and especially in independent film, to find stuff that I want to do, that I'm interested in being a part of. And I've made a lot of friends in the indie world, and I've actually turned down quite a few little jobs because they send me the script ahead of time and I read it and I'm just like, I would love to make $100 tomorrow, but not for that, you know? And so like, that's a huge hurdle, and it's also still a continuous hurdle because as I see movies that are coming out and stuff, I personally am only interested in like a small portion of them, so I'm like, oh my gosh, where am I going to make my money if everything is the worst? But yeah, and I was actually talking to Sally, our DP from Chester Films stuff about it, and she was saying that I asked her, do you want to film blockbuster films? And she was like, no, those movies are crap. Like, the dialogue's bad, it's bad. She's like, I want to keep working with independent writers and directors who are, you know, putting their heart and soul and their spirit into it. And I totally agree with that. It's hard because financially, that's another huge hurdle, being an artist, as I'm sure everyone knows. Financially, the independent world is really hard to get buy-in, but that's where the better stuff is. So it's kind of like just finding a balance, I guess. And finding that balance has been hard and still is. Definitely have not overcome that hurdle, but I feel like I have stood up for myself in situations, which I guess is overcoming it to an extent. I think the biggest one would be being near family, because my whole family lives in Utah. Yeah, the biggest sacrifice for sure has been not being near family and friends. Like, my family, I feel like, I don't want to use the word obligated, but like, you're going to talk to them. Like, you're going to stay in touch. But friends, it's just so easy to just stop talking to each other. And I have a lot of very good friends who I really don't talk to that much anymore, and it's because we're all so busy. And that's another sacrifice, is that I loved going hiking, I loved going to the movies, I loved being with my dog when I had a dog back in Utah, and that's a literal sacrifice right there. We gave my dog to my brother when we moved here because we knew she would not enjoy her parents being gone on 12-hour film sets all day. Like, literally she would live with the dog walker. We can't afford a dog walker in here. But yeah, it's I think it's giving up smaller, enjoying things for the bigger dream is the biggest sacrifice. And I'll be honest, I'm still having to decide if I think it's worth the time. Which is why I'm kind of more interested in doing smaller projects where, like, maybe we just film one weekend and then I take a couple weeks off and then another big weekend, and more spread out rather than making movies all the time. I also have a baby, so she's 8 months old. She's super cute, and that's obviously time with her is a big sacrifice, because when I'm on a set and she's the babysitter, I leave before she wakes up and I get home and she's asleep. So when I was on another set for 5 days, and those were 12-hour days. When I'm in charge of scheduling, I usually try to do 8 to 10, but those were 12-hour days on another indie film I did. And I didn't see her for 5 days, and I was like, this is the worst. So I think time spent with important people and doing things I really like is probably the biggest sacrifice, for sure. The main thing I would say that inspires me is literally is movies and shows that I love to watch, and plays too. Or even books I like to read and music I like to listen to. That's like literal, like in the moment inspiration. In a more abstract sense, I would say when I first started acting, I felt very strongly that the ability to tell stories is something that tell stories in a way that people want to listen to you is something that not everyone can do, and somehow magically I have that ability, and so I thought it would be wrong for me not to use it and cultivate it. And I have a few moments in my memory that I look back on. One time at Comic-Con I met James Marsters. He's Spike in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was awesome. And he told me that he said, I don't remember the exact words right now, but what he said something along the lines of, what we do is, it's a noble thing to do. It's a good thing to do. It's making a difference. And that like really stuck with me because that's what I'd always believed, but hearing it from someone who was successful, I was like, okay, he's not standing up on that stage saying, well, my reasons for getting into acting were, for the glam. No, he's saying that he did it because it was, in a way, because like what I was thinking, it would have been wrong not to utilize the gift that God had given him. And I asked the question on the stage during his panel, and then I talked to him one-on-one at his table, and we talked for like 10 minutes. But yeah, so that's like a specific memory that inspires me. But the general idea of using storytelling to not just change the world and change people, but just to show people that there are other people like them out there. I think that's something a lot of filmmakers forget, is they're like, let's write this story so people will magically stop cutting down trees, I think they forget that sometimes people just need someone to be like them, just to be a normal person. And there are a lot of characters that I feel like come close, but there's only one or two where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this writer and this actor totally get me. The good and the bad. And I think that's an important way to connect, because sometimes we can't find those connections in our day-to-day life. At the moment I only have an Associate of Fine Arts in Musical Theater Performance. I'm a dancer and singer. It's dumb. No, it's not dumb. I just hate dancing. But singing and acting is great. Anyway, I'm going back to school to, honestly, to get a bachelor's degree. Not because I feel like, and this is going to sound cocky, not because I feel like there's more I need to learn, but because no one who would hire me full-time will hire me with that one, so I'm just going to go get one. And so my husband and I, like I said, we have a baby, and our plan had always been that when we had kids, he would stay home and I would go to work, and right, so far we've been switched. I mean, she's only 8 months old, so it's not a big deal, but we've been wanting to make that switch. But with me looking for jobs in the entertainment industry and in other industries I'm interested in, I wasn't able to find anything where they wouldn't accept a bachelor's degree. So that's what's next, is I'm going back to school. But while I'm in school, I actually have a friend who we are planning our own YouTube channel together, which will be great because then I can practice some of my filming and editing and mixing skills and stuff like that. We're going to do a YouTube channel and talk about role playing, and we already have our first 30 episodes planned out on a Google Doc because we're both meticulous planners like that, so it's going to be awesome. Anyway, so I'm really, really excited for that. And yeah, I guess another thing that's next that's a little harder is I want to write my own scripts and start filming them, but I have this weird block where if I'm working on someone else's project, it's hard for me to work on my own. So now that all the films I've been working on this year are done, I can like actually sit down and be like, oh, now I get to write one. So it's a few things that are next, I guess. Yeah. Okay. The biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid of talking to strangers. I know that sounds really weird, but a lot of the connections I've had were from me randomly talking to someone I was sitting next to on the subway, or we were walking dogs next to each other down the street. And the way I got into one of the independent film companies I work with is that I was working as a dog walker, and one of my dog's owners, her dad owns a film company, and I had been walking her dog for 4 months, and then just randomly she was like, oh, I heard you have tomorrow off, like what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm going on set. She was like, oh, you're interested in film? I had no idea, you should have told me, like let me give you jobs, I have stuff that you can do. And I was like, oh my gosh. So like, I know it might sound like it would be annoying, but tell what you want to do to everyone you talk to. Just be like, I'm in film, I'm looking for jobs, like, and I have business cards now, and so I think having business cards is great. I know it seems kind of old school, but at least puts you in people's heads. And I have business cards in my wallet from other people that I look through and I'm like, oh yeah, that person, and I keep it just in case I need that person. But yeah, everyone you talk to, tell them that you're there to make movies or to dance or whatever, because generally in the film industry, especially in the indie film industry, people want to help each other. Like, people want to come together and be on the same team. That would be my biggest piece of advice for sure.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you feel like quality over quantity is one of the biggest things for you?
Yes. It kind of depends. So quality is super, super important to me. However, like I said about being a good business manager, I am crazy about time management. So if you want the quality, a certain quality, and you know it's going to take a long time, you better freaking plan for it, or I will make sure that we keep going, and I do not care what happens. So the long story short is, if you're going to hire an AD whose job it is to keep on time, or if you are an AD, you need to understand that it is your job to make sure that the company still functions and that the film still happens. And in my opinion, sometimes that does sacrifice maybe a little bit of what directors and things want in certain scenes, which is why I've gotten very good at deciding which, I mean, not to say scenes are lowest priority, but deciding which scenes really need to be spent more time on and which ones we need to get through faster, depending on what the schedule is. And I mean, I know that's not quite the same question, but that's an important thing. And then quality and quantity, maybe you're gonna get bad YouTube comments from me saying this, but I am a huge hater of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because they will not stop making stupid movies. And so I have strong feelings about that, and that seems like a huge quantity thing to me. And I know everyone is like, but every movie is so good. I do not agree. I agree that the old ones were good when it was like one movie every 5 years, but now they're coming out with 14 between now and 2021. They just announced that at Comic-Con in San Diego yesterday. And I think that that is a huge problem, because that, to me, I see is more about money quantity to them than, you know, than writing something that's beautiful and good. And I do like a lot of movies and TV shows that have a lot. So that's not entirely, you know, it's not black and white is what I'm trying to say. Quality should be good, but you also need to be realistic about your timeline and your budget and what you're there for. I feel like some stories that are written to be told in like a super expensive, crazy way could just as easily be told filming it in a smaller location with better actors, you know? So it really depends on what you're trying to put out there, but quality as far as storytelling wise is definitely more important than having 14 movies come out in 2 years. So that's my very weird opinion about that.
When you're just trying to get home, as long as home is in your heart, they can't never ever tear y'all apart.